Okay, we are now recording and I'm going to admit. Mm. Hello, hello, welcome. Welcome, welcome. Okay, we are just getting started. All right, welcome back to STEP and welcome into STEP if this is your first session. Yeah, we'll get right into it. You might have heard this intro a couple of times already, but if you're not registered for STEP, please do so. You can do so at this QR code here. You can also do it on our website, step.ucsd.edu. It's just good for us to capture all the numbers of the students that participate with our sessions. And we also have a current midpoint survey that I'll talk about in a little bit. And you must be a registered STEP participant to be eligible for that midpoint survey. But again, I'll mention it again later. All right. So as you know, we have different components to STEP, and we have transfer talks, and we're more than halfway done through the STEP program, and these are the last sessions that we have for the summer. Um, so next week we have undocumented mixed data services, but you can also see the sessions we have had already that are recorded, by the way, and the upcoming sessions that we have left over for the summer. And then we have Transfers Connect, which are more socials. They're less informative, more socials. And we had a couple already. We're gonna have our last sessions for Transfers Connect in the next 2 weeks. And that includes our last in-person session. Last in-person session was really nice. People got to meet each other before the school year started. And you also get to meet the Transfer Hub staff, so that's also really nice too. So, yeah, the invites and information for that in person went out already to those who RSVP'd. But if there's more people that maybe you didn't RSVP, you didn't get the email yesterday, let us know. You can email us and we can get you that information. All right. So looking ahead, again, this is the lineup that we have for the next week. So on August 12th, we have the undocumented status services. They're going to come talk to us about resources. August 13th, next Thursday, we're going to have a Transfers Connect for students with dependents. So if you're a caretaker of child, parent, family member, you're invited to meet other students that also have dependents as well. It's a really nice way to connect. And then next Friday, a week from today, I'm going to talk about how to connect with UCSD professors. And it's good that you're here because we're going to have a resume workshop, and those tools and all the information that you're going to learn today is going to be helpful for a week from today when we talk about how to connect with UCSD professors, because professors do ask for resumes. So it's good that you're here. And then we have the research and involvement series. And so these are actually led by me, the research and involvement coordinator. And so we have a really nice lineup. Last week we had exploring research opportunities at UCSD, which again, all the past sessions, with the exception for the Transfer Connect socials, are recorded. And so that one's recorded if you missed it. But we'll also have some really good sessions for the rest of the month. And then the Transfer Hub also has Transfer Success Peer Coaching Program. So these are transfer peer coaches. They are continuing transfer students who have been at UCSD for at least 3 full quarters. And they are trained to meet with you and talk to you about resources and support you. You can book an appointment with a peer coach virtually. Soon we will have in person. We're just virtual for now because the Transfer Hub has moved. So we're currently in that transition, but yeah, we still have transfer peer coaches who are available to meet with you. And then lastly, our STEP midpoint survey closes today at midnight. So it's about a 2-minute survey. Let us know how you're liking the program since we're a little past the halfway point. What do you like? What do you not like? What can we improve? What would you like to see? Again, you must be registered for the STEP program. We're going to cross-check, the if you're registered for STEP, we select a winner. We're going to make sure that you're registered for STEP. So make sure that you, one, do the survey, but also register for STEP so that you have the ability to win one of our fancy prizes, which are AirPods, Hydro Flask, and a U60 sweatshirt. Um, Awesome. And then Rion also put that link in the chat as well. Some things about today before we transition over to the resume workshop is that you'll notice that the chat is disabled, um, but we can still send links. But the Q&A feature, which if you look on your toolbar, it might be there. You might have to go through the three dots that say more. Um, but um, yeah, definitely if you have questions about the resume workshop, we can put those there and then we'll hopefully have some time at the end for some Q&A. But yeah, all right. And I'm gonna stop sharing and I will hand it over to Ron Reyes from the Career Center.
All right. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully my share screen looks good for everyone. So today we're going to do a resume overview. I'll go over strategies. Again, my name is Ron Reyes. I'm one of the specialists at the Career Center. What my area of focus typically is supporting students pursuing healthcare professions. But in addition to that, all of us here at the Career Center do provide support on resumes and different strategies to help with your professional development. So, that being said, for today, I'm going to go over a couple things. Because we are an educational institution, I am going to go over some hopeful learning outcomes from going over the information we'll talk about today. We'll go and discuss generally a resume overview of every aspect about resume generation and then strategies around that, in addition to more detailed section by section discussion of what we normally see in resumes, along with some final reminders and Q&A. So jumping right into everything. So, through this process, we're hoping that you start understanding how you can craft a resume that communicates your achievements using concise or impact-driven language. So really, we're hoping that you can start thinking about your resume as an opportunity for you to really tailor what you want to say about yourself to potential employers or places that you will plan to apply to. The other area that's always important with resumes is really making sure that you find the best way to highlight yourself in a professional and thoughtful way that both is with integrity and ethical standards, i.e., we're not going to over or undersell our abilities, but be very truthful about what we can bring to those places that we are applying to. And then finally, part of this process is also identifying goals and how you want to leverage current or previous experiences towards applying to future opportunities. So I'll go over a little bit of that as we talk about career development through the lens of like resume generation and review. So, hopefully the raise hand feature still works. Just a quick raise of hands. How many of you have already had in some capacity your resume reviewed either by a staff member at an institution, a manager, or some other professional? Uh-oh. All right. I'll give an extra second or two just to see how many people give me a little hand count of where we're at right now with the group, just so I know familiarity. Okay. So about doing some quick math, maybe about a fourth of you then have had that. That's okay. Uh, the point is, if you haven't had the opportunity yet, one of the things that you can do here at the no, at UCSD as well as at the Career Center is get that review of your resume either by peer advisors or the Career Center staff. So I highly recommend after this presentation, as we have events going on and opportunities throughout the year, that you do leverage that support in order to develop really strong resumes throughout your time here with us. So, moving on, let's just talk real quickly about what exactly is a resume and its purpose. So, really, it's a summary of your skills, education, experience, qualifications, to really support why you have enough skill sets and abilities to apply to the jobs or activities or experiences you're hoping to get into, right? So it's not necessarily comprehensive as some other types of documents, but really it is there to give us a really good highlight of all the main things that an employer or an organization should review to better understand you as somebody who can do the work and will be engaged with the organization, right? And so those are going to be the big takeaways that we want to think about with the resume. Am I highlighting the most relevant and helpful parts of myself, my experiences, and information for those who are reviewing the resume? So I know you can't put this in chat, but maybe either on the question feature or if you want to unmute, pop quiz time. What is the initial amount of time an employer takes to review an applicant's resume? Now, this is the initial review of a person. So I'm kind of curious if, I don't know, Josh, do you want to take a stab and unmute and say what you think it is? Or Joshua?
I think about 10 seconds, given AI nowadays does like the initial portion before they get to the initial review. So 10.
Okay. So I have 10 seconds. Any other takers before? I'm just curious if anyone has any major difference of thought besides 10 seconds. I'll give it a second. All right. If we don't have any other takers, average is 7 seconds. Now, I have been a hiring manager. I've also reviewed a lot of applications and resumes, so I'll talk through this real quick for everyone. So, this is not the only amount of time. This is just the initial pass to get an idea if we're going to spend time continuing to review the resume. So I used to tell my students this is the 7 second test. If I can get to a resume, review it, and feel like I want to continue reviewing it after 7 seconds, it survived the initial pass, right? And so that's why resume strategy is very important because even if there are going to be initial reviews done by ATS or automated systems, it still needs to make it to the people who are going to do the in-depth review. And that's where formatting, clarity of language really becomes incredibly important so that the people reviewing it will want to spend time and take the time to say, is this worth my effort? So, to do that, we're going to go over some initial strategies and formats. So, the first thing you're going to do is really think about identifying what am I actually targeting and what is my intent, both with searching for specific job titles as well as the type of work that I'm going to do. So, what really that means is if I'm going to be applying to places, generally speaking, what am I actually targeting? What are the skills or types of work that I'm interested in? And keeping that in the back of my head as I start to think about how am I going to format my resumes to best fit my target audience, right? So we're really trying to think about how do we identify, with the jobs that we're looking to, key things that are important. Then we come up with a strategy around those jobs. So I like to think about it as there's more than one resume that you're going to have, and depending on your strategy and what you do, those resumes are going to start to fit that area that you're targeting. So, really, what it would be is you can have a master resume or I'm going to capture everything under the sun that I've ever had experience with somewhere. And that doesn't have to be a resume that you give to anybody, but a way for you to map out what you already have at your disposal for the various jobs and places that you are going to apply to. Even if you don't think every experience is going to be relevant for every job, it's good to still have something that comprehensively documents everything that you've done so that we're not missing anything as we tailor or target with specific resumes for specific jobs. So I always like to say the more we can front load the work that we are going to do before a job hunt or before applying to places, the more effective we are going to be once we start tailoring our resumes down. So when we're customizing, there's going to be a couple different things that I think about, right? So we have a large resume that we've already done. We've already put all the experiences for X amount of years on there that we can think about and organized it. Now we're going to start customizing. So in order for us to really get in front of somebody with our resume, we're going to start to try again, customize and optimize for multiple um, viewers, right? So it's going to go through ATS, which is called the Applicant Tracking System, which I will go into depth discussing in the next slides. But we'll also be trying to get in front of employers and hiring managers and HR staff. So the first step to that is when we start developing a resume, we're going to really look at each of the types of jobs that we are applying for in depth, trying to identify what is key terms and language that we are then going to apply to our resume. So this is the part where we really drill down on what is going to be relevant or important or related and transferable for those employers. So from taking a step back when we're talking about resume design and how we're putting it together, there are going to be some key elements that I always want to make sure to start with before we kind of drill down into the resume itself. So some key things that we want to think about. Keywords are going to be important. So we're going to want to target what is all the keywords in the job description and what either similar words or bullet points are going to help demonstrate our understanding and ability to be in alignment with those keywords. And then besides that, we are also going to think about from formatting what is going to be easy and quick access of the information that you are providing, right? There is a human person that is going to be reviewing and it needs to survive past 7 seconds, which means their initial impression is this clearly organized in a way that I can understand it, move through the document fairly quickly, and get what I need to get to, right? I always like to say, from a review standpoint, I've done hiring lots of times. I will have my yes review pile and my maybe or maybe later pile, right? I won't automatically say no because if it got to my desk and through several filters, it might be worth looking at, but I'm going to prioritize. And so I want everybody to be in that yes initial review pile versus maybe later or maybe never, depending on the reviewer, right? And then the last thing that we're thinking about is when we're thinking about resumes, we want to prioritize detailed relevance of skills. So again, coming back to I don't want to hear the buzzword. I want to see an action or a way to prove that we understand what is the skill set or takeaway that we are highlighting on the resume, right? So these are just some key elements that we want to keep in the back of our head as we generate and update or customize a resume. So breaking it down, section by section. The first thing that I tell everybody is some people question summary or qualifications. It's still relevant today. In fact, a lot of times it's going to be super helpful for the human being that's going to be reviewing it. A summary or a summary qualifications is really a short, strong statement that really is going to emphasize key experiences about you that are going to be relevant to the particular job and company that you are applying for. So it should be targeted. I would say most of the time that we see summary qualifications, it's going to be a couple sentences, maybe 2 or 3 sentences that are really designed to be in alignment with maybe a couple key takeaways. I also like to think about a summary qualifications as your opportunity to let them know what are the areas they should pay attention to in your resume, right? Everybody's summary is going to look a little bit different, but the idea is you're going to do some quick alignment of key parts of the job to who you are, and then hopefully that gives them a hint of what they are going to pay attention to for the rest of the time. I get a lot of questions on education. Most students are going to start off keeping education at the top. As you develop a robust amount of skills and advance in your career, education sometimes then moves to the bottom of the resume because it'll be assumed that you already have an education if you're applying to programs that or jobs that have an educational component. So when you're first starting out, we typically keep education first. As you progress in your career, eventually this can move down towards the bottom of the resume for certain types of positions. So, as far as format, though, this provided here is kind of a good general format. So we have the education justified to the left, institution followed by degree, and if you choose, specifics about your degree if it's listed on transcript, and GPA is optional. So for a lot of students, if you feel really good about your GPA and it or the job itself is, say, for example, grant or research based and has an educational component, sometimes GPA is fine to put on there. Other times you don't have to. It's perfectly fine either way. And then besides that, if you are currently in school, we always want to put anticipated completion date. That's usually the easiest format for most of this. If you had done education, whether you completed or not at the a community college or another institution, you can still include that with the approximate dates of attendance that you had been at for places that you are not completing your degree or had previously completed, like an associate's. So, uh, after education, we usually then can jump into experiences. Let me just double check a couple things. Yeah. So, for experience, what some of the things that we think about is really keeping an easy way to follow a format that they're going to get used to for the rest of the time that they're reading your resume. So once you stick to a format, keep it the whole way through, right? So if I'm going to do job title, job, and then location, great. Should be that same way for all other experiences, regardless of type of experience, right? So that this also includes student leadership positions. Maybe I'll say, uh, you know, member at large or um, you know, president, student organization, and then location again, right? So once you have that format, keep with that format the whole way through, along with the approximate timeline in which you have either been there or are ongoing and staying there. The other thing that is going to be very important is how we talk about each of our bullet points. And so with bullet points, there's kind of two main ways that we are going to really talk through them. It's going to be either a quantifiable thing or a qualifying thing. So I'll give you an idea. So quantifiable are going to be, uh, like in the example here, support 15 portfolio and trading administrators with a process of more than 200 daily security transactions, resulting in increased productivity. So that is a very quantifiable measurement of action, right? Something that's more qualifying would be analyze and resolve pending trade and settlement issues. So that's more of a quality of the type of work rather than a specific number or deliverable that has a metric assigned with it, right? So when we're doing talking points or bullet points for our experiences, we want to always think about, am I giving quantifiable or qualifying results or actions? A lot of things that are more the description of the job, we want to typically leave out. It's usually assumed a hiring manager will generally understand and know most functionality of the work, and we're really more interested in what are you achieving, doing, or processes that are helpful for us to understand the context of how it might apply to what we are interested in having you do with us in our company or organization. So that's how I like to think about how do I start deconstructing experiential bullet points. The other thing to be uh, avoidant of is phrases like responsible or duties include. Again, those are going to be more of tasks of the job rather than helpful insights to things that you've done at work. As I mentioned before, leadership and volunteer experiences also count. And so this is something very important for a lot of students that I have to mention. Regardless of how much paid work that you have done, it is also important to recognize other types of experience that have transferable skills or relatable actions and activities, right? So the idea is, with leadership or with volunteering, we can still talk about it as relevant experience. Um, and that's also why in resumes sometimes we will say relevant experience, because we want to make sure that we are highlighting, even if this is not paid, we are developing skill sets that are going to be valuable for the employer, right? And so we can also talk about those types of experiences with similar bullet points. I have had students where, they talked about being in a leadership capacity on a sports team. And so they could talk about the responsibilities of managing a practice or specific training regimens for different members of the team, because that is leadership skills right there, right? I've also had students talk about various responsibilities that they've had in student orgs. Some people had to manage budgets and purchases and orders. That's sales and business skills that students have had utilizing these different types of experiences. So I always want to mention that we want to think of our experiences more broadly and then tailor down and make more specific to the places we're applying for. So hopefully you are not discluding some of these valuable experiences that you've already had. Now, I get questions a lot of, I've done X project for either a class or an organization. Can I include that? The answer is yes. Usually, if we do that, we might want to put it as its own subcategory as like project experience. And so usually the format's a little different. There might be a little bit of a couple sentence descriptor to talk about what that project is. What are maybe some of the key reasons for having that project or the main goal of the study if it's more research based? Um, this could also be pulled from class work or lab, right? If it was something big that you ended up presenting on. Some key things you want to make sure that you are doing is overview of what you intended to do and the result, and if there were any things that helped develop your skill sets, right? So those are the things that we are going to highlight if we do decide to include a project on a resume. Some other things that you can put in, and it really depends on how you feel about what you want to highlight. A lot of resumes will have skills. Sometimes students will include any professional development or training that they received as part of either their education or different roles that they've been a part of. For my students that have done research or labs, sometimes they'll include publications, poster presentations. For my people who have had previous healthcare certifications, they'll include that sometimes. And then also awards and achievements can sometimes be noted, especially if it's for positions that are more academic based, right? So these are all different things to consider. There's no one right way to do it, but it's really going to be dependent on which of these sections are going to best support how you are aligning yourself with what's necessary for the work or the title and job that you're applying to. So again, if it's relevant and truthful, include it. So overall, some basic takeaways that I hope everybody does. So when approaching a resume, we want to make sure it's digestible and are clear about our qualifications. So you'll have a summary and some core information that is going to be provided. Uh, Generally speaking, most resumes are going to be 1 to 2 pages. Very rarely it's larger than that until maybe somebody is much farther along in their career and has to include a little bit more robust information, right? Technically speaking, if we do get to about 2 pages, it should be close to at least a page and a half to 2 pages if we're going to do 2 pages. Technically speaking, 2 page resumes are actually going to be reviewed more than 1 page resumes statistically. So if you ever heard of, oh, it has to be 1 page, please ignore that. That's several decades old now. this third bullet point kind of hurts me a little bit, but don't be too artistic with a resume. It should be clean and easy to navigate for multiple reasons. So keep it to a couple basic colors, simple text, avoid text boxes, columns, photos. Those are highly unnecessary and will most likely frustrate an HR reviewer if they have to go through additional steps to get to the information that they need to get to, right? Um, if we're talking experiences, try and follow an equation bullet point format if possible. A very interesting and maybe novel way to read bullet points was provided to us by Google Recruiters, which is achieved X as measured through Y by doing Z. If you know the STAR method, which is another methodology, you can use that as well. But really think about how am I providing either action or a clear progression of what is the takeaway in my bullet points. Uh, Along that same lines, we want to use active language in our resumes. So implement strong action verbs. It could be things such as organized, developed, led. Uh, if we did a novel process in research, it could be pioneered. That's rare, but to give you an idea, active language is always going to be helpful for showing what we've done. And again, if anything, just remind yourself, quantify and qualify. How are these bullet points providing tangible either takeaways or relatable actions that relate to either the job or skill sets that are going to be helpful in the work that you are doing? So, before we wrap up, there are a couple major areas that are more current with resumes that we should be factoring in as part of the process. The first part is ATS. So, what is ATS? It's called the Applicant Tracking System. It's software used by employers to collect, organize, and screen job applications. Uh, in more recent years, there is AI integration into ATS, which helps streamline the hiring process by looking for keywords, experiences, and qualifications and parsing through that data. So, I'm going to give you some pro tips on how we handle ATS, and we can always open it during Q&A. So real quickly, keep things simple. That is the first thing I'm going to say. If we are using templates, more often than not, templates and programs that generate resumes will have backend code that ATS does not like. So stick to standard Word or PDF formats and use basic means to generate. It's going to be a lot less likely to cause issues for you as an applicant. Um, some areas to note with ATS, you want to make sure that you are using specific, clear language and avoid acronyms. So if I had a CPA license, great, say certified public accountant. Uh, it's going to be a lot clearer on flagging it in the system if things are spelled out rather than using acronyms. Don't use tables. Again, avoid tables and columns. It doesn't like it. Bullet points should be plain. Decorative ones can cause issues. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. Times New Roman and Arial are usually the most favorite of fonts, but I've also put on here an example of other ones that typically are fine. Be mindful of how you format dates. Dates are typically month or YYYY, so month and year, or written out month plus year. The other thing that I would be mindful of with these applicant tracking systems, um, I've had students use engineering software to put the resume together. It will flag it, and sometimes it will not read it the same. So again, using third-party programs can sometimes cause issues for students when they utilize that for their resume. And then the last, and this sounds silly, but please do it, is when you save files that are going to be uploaded, keep it to a very direct file format with your information and name for tracking. So for example, first name, last name, resume, fine, right? We don't want to overcomplicate the documents that we are uploading to these systems. So when we're optimizing for that, I'm going to say a couple things. Uh, PDFs and Word documents are ideal. Personally, if we are okay submitting a Word document, it is the most likely format that will not cause any issues. I will say PDFs degrade over time due to system updates. So if I had a PDF that was 1 month old, there is maybe a low risk of that file not carrying over. If I have a PDF that is 3, 4, 5, 6 months old, there tends to be differences in how it gets read based off updates, and information will start to degrade over time. So please be mindful of that when you are uploading your resume. Again, keep to plain text formats. Another thing that is interesting about ATS, it is designed with very specific headers in mind. So the headers that it's going to recognize are summary, anything with the word experience, education, and skills. If we use any other type of header that does not have one of those four things in it, it's probably not going to get reviewed or have a very low priority on the automated review. So please keep that in mind. Um, for students that want to break up their experiences, include the word experience, but still break it up. So relevant experience at the top, other experiences at the bottom. Again, we keyed the word experience, so all of it will still get reviewed. I would also be mindful about when I said we're going to target based off of job description. It's really about knowing what are those keywords so that we are utilizing that similar language in our resume. And that way ATS will pick it up. And then with contact information within the document, uh, usually that's going to be in your header. Uh, Odd enough, ATS doesn't always like having things in the header, so we always just say instead of putting it into the header, which I used to love doing, we would want to put it in the body of the resume. So avoid using headers and footers, especially if you're using like Google Docs or Word documents. Don't put any important information in those headers or footers. So that being said, I've also gotten a lot of questions. I'm going to use AI to help me with my resume. You can to a degree. And so I'm going to go over how we want to use it ethically and responsibly for purposes of our resume, because this will come up often, especially nowadays, especially working with recruiters. So ways that we can use AI in a way that is not going to cause issues. So the first way is in how we want to refine our search. So it is most large language models are designed to understand what you're asking them if we prompt them correctly. So we can actually use it for maybe comprehensively coming up with a list of job titles and industries based off the types of skills and interest and areas that I want to do. So maybe I'm going to put in a prompt that is designed to um, support generating a list that you want to have of types of jobs that you want to search for. That's great. We can use that. Another way that I've seen it used is compiling a list of skills and terms that you want to integrate into your resume based off the jobs and titles that you are looking at. So you can say, save a bunch of job titles, upload them, and say, these are the jobs that I'm looking for, understanding X, Y, and Z about me. Give me a list of skills and terms that I can consider incorporating into my resume based off of X type of work that I've done before. And then it'll start giving you a list of potential keywords that you want to kind of work through. Always read and proof, obviously, with that, but it gives you an idea of maybe some language that you might want to mirror in your resume. The other thing you can do, it is great for proofing to a degree, right? So you can't upload a resume and say, review this, checking for grammar and spelling errors, suggest ways to make this language more concise. And this is if you have very long bullet points. I'm talking about your bullet point that's 3 sentences, too long, right? Or highlight areas on my resume that might be unclear or need more clarification. That one is a really good one to ask, because then it might say this bullet point is too short or doesn't provide additional context. Uh, as such, all of this usage needs to be thoughtful, right? So AI can hallucinate. So you want to check for accuracy. And if it's providing you uh, qualifications and experiences you might want to include, make sure it's actually relevant to the job and what you've actually done, right? I've seen too many students put information on there that is not actually truthful to the work that they've done, and that becomes a problem later on interview if they actually make it to interview. The other thing is do not blind copy and paste anything. It's great for generating content. It's great for providing organization and flow. But if we copy and paste it, it is not going to read well. I can spot a lot of these things a mile away because there's going to be inconsistency in either communication or overall application once we review it entirely. So take what you have and then always remember it needs to have a human touch on it. Otherwise, it's not going to survive the three-part process of the review. And then please be mindful as you use these tools because as much as they are great, systems will also flag and catch likeliness of it being utilized. So there's always certain syntax and structures that these models utilize that may not be in alignment with how you would like to communicate, and we catch on to that very quickly. So those are some major considerations that I would have, especially utilizing AI tools. Now, I did notice on the question that would you recommend adding a professional portrait picture? Absolutely not. For most resume uploads, again, no extra pictures, no extra text boxes, no columns. If it's going through an automated system, that will mess it up. It just will. So, again, clean formats. If we are adding a picture and printing it out and handing it to the person in an interview, maybe that's fine. But for anything that we are submitting widely or through systems, cleaner formats are always going to be the best. And so I always put that in there as a reminder for everybody when we're talking about how we are generating and putting these things together. I will say there's a lot of really pretty templates out there that are horrible for both application systems and reviewers. And so, I'm talking about Microsoft Word and Canva. There are a lot of those templates that are absolutely terrible for applicant tracking. So I do want to mention that since I just saw that comment about portraits. So, as a review, now this is a sample of how the different components could come together on a resume. Please ignore the cute, little boxes or not boxes, circles that are in this resume, because this is actually the one-page resume guide that we have available for download at the Career Center. So it's cute, but the more important thing to pay attention to is the format. So first, last name, contact information, summary, education, skills, experience, projects, student experience or leadership. Again, this is a basic example, but taking everything that we just talked about before, I wanted to give you an example of how we kind of visualize that information. And these guides are available for download on the Career Center website, and I can also send them over, um, for folks to review. And then I did see on the question, how important is the summary? Well, I'll answer it this way. You can either rely on an automated system to summarize what are the things to pay attention to on your resume, or you could take the initiative and make sure that you are telling the reviewer what are the key things that they should know about you and not rely on something to parse something together out of whatever algorithm. So I always say, generally speaking, summaries are going to be very helpful or valuable if we're being more targeted with the positions we're applying for. The only instance that I would see a summary not being as helpful is if it's a very standard resume that is going to be in, say, a company submission system where we're actually applying to 3 or 4 different jobs all at once with the same resume because that's how that company does it. Maybe then we'll take out the summary, right? So that the system will generate its own. Generally speaking, though, for a lot of students who would want to say it's more likely that a summary is going to be more helpful than hurtful in most cases. So that's just to give you an idea as we are looking through this. Let me check. So real quick, some considerations with the resume. It's really about making sure it's your first step in long-term planning about what you want to do with your career and work, right? So we initially organize resumes so that we have an idea of where we're at, and then we apply that to the places that we are going. And resumes are things that we are going to continue having multiple iterations, and it's going to follow us the entirety of our career. So one of the things I like to say is sometimes we'll look at a job and goes, I'd love to eventually be there. Great. Save it out. Maybe the next jobs I'm going to apply to will incorporate skills or areas that help get me towards that dream job, right? But we can't always get our dream job right out the gate. A lot of times we're going to have a lot of other experiences we have to do to build up the skill sets that we need in order to get there. So I always like to think about resumes as our first step in long-term career planning. And then as you grow, things are going to change, highlight and be adjusted according to what you apply to next. And lastly, keeping track of all of this is super helpful because we're going to be able to better understand how we are going to quantify and qualify everything that we do moving forward. And so doing it once is great. Doing it over the period of time that we are both in our education as well as afterwards will further develop how well we are going to communicate with our next employer. So with that, I will transition to Q&A. And I'll start with the questions in the chat. We also can open up for if people want to raise their hand and ask them live. Either is fine. And so I have, would you recommend including links to a portfolio or certification in a resume? So I'll split that up. Uh, Portfolios, yes. If you have a link to portfolio, usually that's going to go in the header. A lot of students also like to put things like their LinkedIn profile in the header. Because again, a resume is going to be a short 1 to 2 page document, but maybe something like a portfolio or LinkedIn is going to be a lot better for comprehensively covering a bunch of things that we're not going to be able to fit in our resume. The one caveat I have with both of those things, for both portfolio or something like LinkedIn, is to make sure that when we click on the link, what we want to see first is what we want to see first. So, for example, I have a lot of students with portfolios. Put your strongest stuff first or at the top so that that's what we're leading with somebody who does happen to click on it. As far as certifications, most of the time, if we spell out what the certification is, we don't need an actual link to prove it. If we do need a proof of a certification, they will ask for that after the interview if we are potentially going to get hired for that position, right? So saying that we have the certification is typically fine. Again, spelled out, not an acronym, but spell it out just to be safe. But be prepared if it is a position that does require a certain level of certification to be able to properly provide that documentation as part of the hiring process. So that's how I would handle certifications and portfolios. Um, as far as, let me see here, are hobbies being in a resume unfavorable? Depends. So hobbies can be sometimes included, but I would hope it's because there is some level of connection either to the company or the job that makes the hobby feel more relevant. So I'll give you some examples. Say I have a student that has taken a bunch of ceramics classes at UCSD's, uh, you know, um, I'm blanking out right now, the craft center, right? We actually have a lot of ceramics courses, and that happens to be a student's hobby. And they are applying for a summer arts camp position even though that student isn't a arts major, they have relevant skills in their hobby that help them apply to that camp position. So maybe sometimes a hobby is going to be relevant because there's either a skill, an understanding, an area that has some connection to either a company, an organization, or skill sets that might be helpful. Not always, right? But it depends, right? So I would say hobbies can be included, but we have to be very mindful about the amount of space these things take. So I would only include hobbies if you could find a way that it makes a reasonable connection to the thing that you are applying for. Good question, though. I have seen that a lot. Other questions? Also, how are we doing on time?
We're doing good. Yeah, we have about 8 minutes. Yeah.
Perfect. Other things that you can ask questions about. I have tried to apply to X, but I don't know where to start. Something like that would be good. So yeah, what other
Um,
questions?
I'd like to also bring up so next Friday at the
Mhm,
same time, 12 to 1, I'll do a workshop on like how to connect with professors at UCSD, right? How to cold email. And part of that, I also talk about like resumes and a question that I get from transfers, and I'd like to maybe hear your input. Maybe
mhm.
folks here also have questions, is like, um, oftentimes transfers who just start, their first quarter and they're like, I want to make a resume for research opportunities to send to maybe like professors or apply to research programs. But a lot of transfers are kind of like, well, I don't have research experience and maybe they worked at Starbucks before they transferred to UCC and they're like, what can I do? So I don't know. I wonder if you have any thoughts or any suggestions for that, because maybe folks here are in the same.
Yeah, of course. UCSD is the R1 institution, so there are a lot of research opportunities. There's a couple different things that I would say. First is even if you don't have research experience, there's a lot of research opportunities where you can have very little to no experience and still apply. So that does actually exist. So I want to just put that out there. They get it. You guys are
Mhm.
students. Not everybody is going to be able to get access to a lab right away and would be kind of putting the cart before the horse if they didn't have opportunities that let you learn what you need to learn to work in a lab, right? So there are going to be specific opportunities that are very entry level, little to no experience. However, what can help is highlighting that you have relevant lab experience in your classes, right? A lot of my students will be coming in from the community college with maybe a microbiome lab already completed, or maybe anatomy or physio lab, or maybe they did OChem at the community college and they had a lab that was a little bit more involved. And so part of your relevant experience is also if you've done relevant lab work in your classes, especially for those introductory level lab opportunities out there. So that is something where sometimes a student could put relevant coursework as part of that information as it relates to the labs that are within that same sphere of information. The other thing that I tell a lot of students is even if it's not directly related to lab work, there's a lot of transferable skills that are absolutely important, right? Being task oriented, being able to execute on a high volume of work by having, you know, um, time management skills and being able to highlight those skills in different jobs. For my student that is a shift lead at Starbucks, there's a certain level of responsibility in coordinating people's schedules and being accountable and having the ability to work with a team and being able to deal with difficult situations because it ends up being on your plate that you have to deal with an irate person that's targeting you even though you have nothing to do with the situation, right? Those are all skills that are still valuable, regardless of what opportunity you're applying for. And even in a lab, you're working with a lot of other people. You got to be able to work well with others. And so, these are things that I always like to think about. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one match to still have some relevance or show, a certain level of professionalism or maturity with the things that we want to do. So I would say those are all good starting points in how you might want to generate or adjust to things like a research opportunity. And sometimes even having projects that you've done in class is a good starting point.
Yeah, love it. We're on the same wavelength because that is exactly what I also
Mhm,
share with transfers. So I love it.
mhm.
We got a couple more questions.
All right. What is the difference between a CV and a resume? Ooh, okay. I'm going to get into this very quickly. So, caveat. The US is slightly different than other countries. We have a very particular way that we operate when it comes to resumes. So resumes is the standard language we use for everything, and it's typically going to be related to industry. It gets dicey when we switch over to academia. So once we're in academia, it's more likely going to be a curriculum vitae over a resume because, at least from a U.S. educational context, curriculum vitae is really designed for research faculty, people who are within a realm where we can list our entire history on a CV. And if I am a faculty member that's been teaching for 20 years, that CV is going to be amazingly large, right? And that's because they are really trying to show what is my comprehensive body of work as a scholar, as a researcher, as an academic. So that is usually the biggest jumping point that it shows a stark difference between a resume and a CV. A lot of people accidentally think CV as cover letter. Nah, curriculum vitae is a CV, and that is for academic purposes typically. A cover letter is its own separate thing. So those are some big things that I usually touch on whenever I hear. So break down CV for me. And then we also do work with our graduate students, especially since a lot of students applying to graduate programs or our graduate student will have to have a CV. Also, pro tip, if you're working on CVs, guess what? All your faculty members have CVs in your majors and in your departments. And so sometimes it's good to go to them to see how their logic is based off of their specific profession, area of study, area of focus, and expertise. And then I see here, do you recommend indicating proficiency levels for software languages in a resume? Only if it warrants it based off of the uh, job description itself, right? Um, I would say most of the time for a lot of jobs, if they are interested in level of proficiency, you are going to be tested on it, and they are going to place your level of proficiency over taking anything at face value. So it's usually a lot better as an approach just to say, generally, if you can at least conversationally be proficient, maybe for language, you could say conversational or interpreter. If you've had done formal interpreting, that might be fine. But as far as with software and other things, usually you're going to be tested on it. So unless the job specifically is asking to indicate your level of proficiency, it's better just to list it as is and move on. So that's how I would usually handle software and language. Um, I will get I will provide the resume template. Really, it's just if you go to the UC San Diego Career Center, it's one of the first things that you can get access to, and I'll also make sure a copy gets sent out after presentation. Um, and then what goes on a cover letter? How long should it be? Cover letters are 1 to 2 pages. They are very much tailored to show very specific alignment and talking points that show the company, the job position, and why you are the best fit for that company and job. And so a lot of recruiters say a cover letter is a double-edged sword. If we really know our things, we're really gunning for this very specific position, and we can prove it, a cover letter is the best way to make an impact on the hiring manager, right? Not the HR rep or ATS, but the hiring manager who's doing the final decision. However, if a cover letter is poorly executed or not done well, it can be a detractor. I have seen this as a hiring manager. So I've seen cover letters that make me prioritize somebody, and I've seen cover letters that make me understand that they really did not do their homework, right? So it is a double-edged sword, but it can be highly effective, especially for the positions that we feel very strongly about. So, and then we also have workshops specific to cover letter that we do year round with the Career Center if you are interested. And then do you recommend putting activities like hackathons, career development workshops, boot camps under relevant experience or projects? I would say hackathons probably more under projects, depending on the type of workshop and if you're running it or participating on it, it might go elsewhere, right? All of those things should be dependent on what is the closest category that is both truthful and accurate to your part in it, right? So participating is one thing, running is another thing. And so I would be very mindful of that. Generally speaking, a lot of things can be projects and other relevant experiences is a pretty good catch-all title. If it's not formal or volunteer work, that would probably be a way to go. But also, depending on what job we're applying for and how we're applying it, that will also make a difference. So I would say put it in a bucket somewhere to start and definitely see about, depending on the job, maybe talking through with either a career peer or a mentor about how we're applying that specific area based off of the job that we're applying to. Hope that makes sense. It can go in more than one place, but it's always what is the most appropriate based off of what you actually did and the level of alignment with the job that we're talking about. Short answer is it depends. So,
All right.
last question. I'll just remind everybody, the Career Center has drop-in hours and one-on-one appointments for resume support. And we also do targeted workshops every quarter. So that's to answer the where can I get resume help? Those are all the ones provided by the Career Center. And I know you also have mentors that help you as well.
Question on that, Ron. Can incoming transfers start to get that help like this summer right now, or does it
As
start in the fall quarter?
It typically starts in the fall, but as soon as you
Okay,
get handshake access, you can come in.
gotcha.
Just please, two things to ask everybody to make your life a whole lot easier and very effective. One, make sure you download from the Career Center website the resume and cover letter guide, as well as the job search guide, so that you can come to us with, the types of jobs you're planning to apply for, and as best as you can, whatever you can organize to that type of appointment. What that does is it helps us maximize on the time you have with us to get a really strong resume going early.
Nice. All right. Well, Ron, thank you so much. I think you had a lot of valuable information here. And thanks everybody else for joining. And I will end it here. Have a great weekend. Thank you.